Welcome to Circle of Hearts Radio. Journey with Grandmother Allayah as she enters her magical world of relics, sacred sites, and ancient crystal skulls. Meet with exciting trailblazer authors and individuals shifting the consciousness of humanity. Send her your questions to be answered on air on her monthly segment, Ask the Oracle. And now your host, Grandmother Allayah, in the sanctuary on the airwaves on OMTimes Radio.
Radio on OMTimes Radio FM. I am Allayah, your host, and today we travel to Peru to talk with Brien Foerster, a very recognized and respected researcher on the subject of elongated skulls and also many other hidden mysteries. Hi, Brien. I want to make sure you're there.
Yes, I am.
Good. All right. A lot of us are very interested in actually what makes you tick. To start off, a little bit about your bio. You started at a really early age. I mean, you didn't seem like the normal kid at 11. At 11, you started to get interested in the indigenous cultures. Is that right?
Yes, that's right.
What made you interested? I mean, usually 11-year-old boys are, they're all over the place. They don't start really getting focused.
I've been focused actually before that. I've always had an interest in ancient mysteries and indigenous cultures from as far back as I can remember. But I took an active interest at age 11 by starting to learn carving from Native American experts.
That's quite interesting. And is it, like I said, from my perspective, I look at the soul contracts and spirituality. That seems to be part of your destiny to go and bring forth all this information. Then you moved to, just a little bit more, you moved to Hawaii, and then you also finally got involved into Peru. What drew you to Peru?
Honestly, I just woke up one morning after having explored all of Polynesia, more or less, and the word Peru just repeated itself in my head a number of times. And so I decided, gee, maybe I should go and explore Peru.
Yeah, well, like I said, from my perspective, people that are interested in soul paths and stuff, that this is quite common. So all of a sudden you get a knock on the head. Okay, this is where you need to explore more, to find out about more. And what I found interesting was your background, a little bit about understanding the Polynesian area. Now, some of the I put a question out for my followers where if you had a question, could ask Brien something, what would you ask? And one of the questions were, is there any possible connection to the Lemurian culture with the elongated skulls? I mean, it's all conjecture, but what
it is possible. I actually wrote a book called Crimson Horizon about the existence of ancient bloodlines of red hair that still exist in Hawaii, Tahiti, New Zealand, and Easter Island. And I know for sure that on Easter Island and in Tahiti, there was an ancient line of people that had elongated skulls. Nothing of that, as far as I know, still exists, but the red hair does exist. And when I ask or would ask people there, where does that come from? They would say, oh, that's from hundreds, if not thousands of years ago. It wasn't part of European integration. It's much older, actually, than the Polynesians themselves.
Yeah, that's what it just, sometimes when we take a look at the whole picture, like a lot of us are interested in the information about Lemuria. It seems that these people, they transmigrated to different areas, and to me, it just seems there's a correlation. I saw that book that you mentioned. Is that one of your newer books?
I believe I've written 16. I think that's probably about number 13, 12 or
Okay.
13.
All right, because I just caught sight of that the other day. That's very interesting. But like I said, even the lore, here's where you go with spirituality and physical evidence. About Viracocha. I'm probably not saying his name right, but he was a creator god to the Incas. Is
Uh-huh.
that right? Now, he was supposed to be blonde, I think.
Well, actually, there's a difference between Viracocha is actually the creator god, and some people get that confused with Viracochan, who was the one sent by the creator in order to educate the people. And many of the stories say that actually it was a group of people called the Viracochan people who were very tall, of light skinned, and possibly blondish or reddish hair. They were definitely different than the local indigenous people.
And that's what kind of seems to correlate with the Polynesian lore and going back to the Lemurians. It just seems like if you start connecting all the dots, something about the elongated skull people, um, wherever they seem to land, they've created cultures or very
Def-
high technology that wasn't available there at the time.
yeah, that's very true. And the more that the more that you study, for example, the Pacific, and especially Polynesia, if you find the right local person of knowledge, they all admit that there were people living in the different Polynesian island groups prior to the standard archaeological, anthropological migration stories. And so that's where, of course, the red haired people become interesting because in each of the cases, they're said to have been a very peaceful people. And when the invasion, more or less, happened of the Polynesians from Tahiti, who were quite warlike, those bloodlines weren't necessarily wiped out, but high percentages of the original populations were either exterminated or absorbed into these new people arriving.
Hmm. No, I mean it's really fascinating because even a little bit off, I've always studied ancient China, and I know there were some skulls found, I think, around Mongolia or whatever. But the first emperor, he was found around the Kulkan Mountains, but he brought civilization. He's supposedly descended from the skies, and he had brought civilization to ancient China, a lot of high technology. And he always wore this really weird headdress that kind of, if you really look at it, it was like he was trying to possibly hide the formation of his head, just as the Egyptians would have this very strange. I mean, it was a different headdress. But you see the point I'm getting at?
Definitely. And actually, if you look at the Phoenicians, there are also depictions of the same thing. So when you look at a number of ancient bloodlines and you see the type of either helmet or not crown, but headdress they would wear, there are very often these elongated forms of headgear, often which are red in color. And one can deduce that they are referring to an ancient bloodline that was red haired in many parts of the world.
Yeah, I don't know. That's why I always, like I said, I think the person that had asked me, she was connecting the dots too. If we connect it back even further, it goes back to the possible Lemurian culture. So it's a deduction. Everything is conjecture. There's actually no written or physical evidence, but it's interesting to kind of put together and think about it anyhow.
Yeah.
um, Now, I know we're heading to break, so but after break, I would like to talk about Viracocha and maybe his path and a little bit get into the Peruvian, because it seems like wherever he traveled in this area, there was spots of skulls found, elongated skulls, and also very high technology. So, like I said, that will be for in the next segment. But and then he seems you can explain to me he seems to disappear and he starts traveling again, and that's why I was wondering if there's a connection to Easter Island with also because there was I know I seem all over the place, but there's so much information on you just trying to bring forth how these elongated skull individuals has such influence on different parts of the world and culture and try to follow their own path or travels. If you can follow me.
Sure.
Okay, so that, I really want to get that started after the next break, but most just briefly before into the break, is Peru the most exciting place you've been?
I would say Peru and Egypt are the two most exciting.
Mm. It just seems like there's not a lot. I mean, you've brought a great deal of information about Peru. Prior to that, people is every time I look at your forum, you're bringing out other places in the area that haven't even been discussed. All right, we'll get back to you.
Oh, okay.
The best of the holistic, spiritual, and conscious world. OMTimes Radio. IOM FM. Have you ever wondered how to change your love paradigm? The secret key is finding a love partnership, not just a regular connection. How do you find these? Through conscious relationships. Ascending Hearts Dating is a dating site for people like you that believes in second chances and a different type of spiritual connection. Try Ascending Hearts for free today at ascendinghearts.com and change your love paradigm. Ascending Hearts, the premier dating community for the spiritually awake.
Matt Connerton here. Join Jen Coffey and I twice a week for Matt Connerton Unleashed, a political talk show that's a little different than what you're used to. No liberal or conservative agenda here, just an honest dialogue about truth and how things really work in the world of politics. Matt Connerton Unleashed, every Tuesday and Thursday night at 11 p.m. Eastern on OMTimes Radio.
Hi, this is Sylvia Henderson, intuitive life coach and energy healer. Are you ready to elevate and rise way above your normal? Be sure to listen to my show, Intuitive Transformations, on OMTimes Radio, Sunday evenings at 9 p.m. Eastern. Get the inspiration you need to transform your life.
Host your show on IOM FM, the radio network of OMTimes Media, one of the more recognized brand names in the conscious community, and is backed by the extensive marketing reach of OMTimes. Hosting a show on IOM FM immediately connects you with our extensive dedicated community. Free your mind with OMTimes Radio, IOM FM.
Elongated skulls. Paracas. Paracas?
Caracas.
Yeah, my pronunciation of some of these areas really need to be said by you. Um, is this the oldest site? Or would you say that's a central site?
I would call it the most profound site. My most recent book is called The Elongated Skulls of Peru and Bolivia. And so what I did with that is to look chronologically and geographically at where elongated skulls are found. The Paracas seem to have spontaneously on the coast of Peru about 1000 BC and then disappeared 100 AD. But there are other cultures in Bolivia with very elongated skulls that predate the Paracas by up to at least 2,000 years.
Wow. Would that have any relationship? Let's go back to Viracocha again. Because in that, like I said, I went over that book, The Elongated Skulls of Peru and Bolivia, last week. And it's really interesting. You go into such details. You discuss Viracocha and also his path as he travels down.
Yeah, that's really quite fascinating, and I'll be extending on that topic in my next book, because the path of Viracocha is an energy line for those into dowsing and earth energies, and it goes from Lake Titicaca, which is in both Peru and Bolivia, in a northwesterly direction up through Peru to the border of Peru and Ecuador. And so along that line is where we find almost all of the elongated skulls and almost all of the megalithic structures of Peru and Bolivia, which is actually quite a profound thing.
It is, because ley lines, I think a lot of times people do not add that equation of ley lines and the vibrational or electronical or water grids of the earth. It just really starts, their power spots. It seems like wherever there is, these megalithic stone structures, they are close or on a ley line.
Yeah, it's true. And the thing is, archaeologists in general, don't look at the concept of earth energies or ley lines because they think it's too out there for their left brain system. But now we have the physical evidence that the megaliths are lined up almost in a perfect straight line right on top of what is called the path of Viracocha. We had a number of dowsers come with us from various parts of the world, and we in fact mapped the path of Viracocha over the course of 10 days, and they were totally convinced that there was a direct correlation between the earth energies and the alignment of these structures.
It makes you, all right, if we're starting getting to the physical evidence, what do you think, again, conjecture, the purpose of these structures on these ley lines? Was there an overall divine plan, possibly? I mean, it's all conjecture.
Right. But the majority of the megalithic structures were made likely thousands of years before the existence of the famous Inca. And the Inca inherited those sites, recognized that they were energetic, and therefore made their major centers there as well. But also all of the stone that's involved in the megalithic works are very high in quartz content. And of course, quartz is excellent for energetic purposes. So whoever the ancient builders were, they didn't simply use local stones. Sometimes they would go 50 kilometers or more in order to get the exact stone they required, high in quartz content, so that these structures were enhanced very much by the earth energies that were naturally passing through them.
So you have a high technology where you would not even think that technology would exist. So here is another hypothetical question. If you have Viracocha, and let's say he is with the elongated skulls, could there be hybrids? I know it sounds, it's like these people that came from Lemuria, let's say they were star seeds. And, to continue on with civilizations, it seems like there was something else going on there.
Yeah, well, it's actually it's possible that, or at least some people theorize that the Viracochans actually came up the Paraguay River. So they actually moved in from the Atlantic, and if you follow the Paraguay River, which is on the Atlantic side, all the way up to its source, you wind up at the Bolivian Altiplano, which is where we find the quite famous and profound megalithic sites of Tiwanaku and Pumapunku.
Mm.
And then it's from there that they traveled mainly northwesterly, but also if you travel in a southeasterly direction, follow the line or the path of Viracocha south, you go through again some major sites. One is the Silver Mountain, which literally was a mountain of silver called Potosi. And then through there, you go through other very enigmatic ancient sites down and moving into Chile.
Yeah, it's now I'm going to say I'm not that familiar, honestly, with South America. My geographic knowledge is poor, but it seems like you're going pretty much in description down part of the coastline. Am I correct or
Right.
not? All right. What about inland? Is there any particular sites that would correspond, let's say, further inland in South America? I mean, that's my own curiosity. Or is everything just centered on this path of Viracocha?
Most of it is centered on the path of Viracocha. That's where the known profound ancient sites are. The Paracas are kind of different because they actually are on the coast itself, whereas the path of Viracocha is inland, more or less in the Andes Mountains, which are reasonably close to the Pacific Ocean. But to expand on this even more, if you get a Google Earth map or whatever and look at this path of Viracocha, if you simply draw a line from Lake Titicaca to the Peru-Ecuador border and then continue on, you wind up in Olmec territory in Mexico. And,
Yeah.
that of course is the region where you find you find Kukulkan and
Mm-hmm.
Quetzalcoatl, who were also these ancient teachers who brought profound knowledge, and the feathered serpent concept, which is what both of these were as well, possibly as Viracocha, is that locally in the Inca tradition and others, they have three powerful animals that were symbolic to them. One was the serpent, the other was the puma, and the other was the condor. And what they symbolize are the serpent represents the subconscious, the puma is the conscious, and the condor is the superconscious. And so I think the idea of the feathered serpent is one who is profoundly evolved on a subconscious, conscious, and superconscious level.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. It really does because it just seems um, these all were teachers. And going back to my Lemurian theory again, these teachers migrated to other areas. Even the Olmec, Kukulkan, he was um, he was also a very light skinned, if I remember correctly. It just seems like they were considered these creator gods or creators of civilization, so different than what was indigenous to that area at the moment. Whether the Olmec area, here comes this very strange person is teaching us all these different things, or with Viracocha, the same. So it's kind of really fascinating.
It is, and basically, it said that all three of the characters, Viracocha, Kukulkan, and the other, they came from a distant land,
Mm.
across the sea, either from where the sun rises or the sun sets. And so, obviously, you're most likely talking about an individual or individuals who probably weren't just traveling for fun and decided to teach a bunch of people.
No, that's for sure.
They were likely refugees from somewhere, and that's where you get into the concept of Mu or Lemuria, and also, the concept of Atlantis being lands that were destroyed, and those that could left and resettled. They were of a profound level of knowledge. They were peaceful. They freely gave their information. That's what ties the three in. And you are correct, in a lot of accounts, these people looked completely different from the local indigenous people.
So, just before we head on the next break, I was going to say, is somehow in his path, would there be a direction that he could tie into Easter Island? Because again, there is the lore of these people coming on a boat.
Right.
And I don't know, even if you look at the great, the statues, Maori statues, I mean, no, I wouldn't call them elongated skulls, but they have been referred to as cone heads, the ones without the hats. But I mean, I was just trying to think myself if that could be tied in possibly.
That's a very great subject to discuss.
I'm going to have to get you on the next time, and we'll just discuss that one. Like I said, the hour goes far too quickly. But it's fascinating to tie all this together, to put it all together. And the elongated skulls have always fascinated me. And first, I always thought they were just in the, Peruvian area. And to find out there's pockets of them all over the world.
That's right.
I don't know. It's just like countries. They don't like to bring this information up. We'll get back to that.
Okay.
Connecting you with the best of the conscious minds in the world. OMTimes Radio. IOM FM. The number one reason girls drop out of school in sub-Saharan Africa is lack of access to feminine hygiene products. The Pads for Schoolgirls Project, an outreach of Humanity Healing International, is changing this paradigm by setting up sewing programs at schools, teaching girls a vocational skill, while producing the reusable pads that help keep them attending classes. The girls pay it forward by making and giving pad kits to other girls in need. To learn more, visit humanityhealing.org. Humanity Healing is where your heart is.
Do you have time to read that inspiring book or that blog post you've been meaning to get to? In your busy world, how do you improve yourself and keep your life going? I'm Lisa Kay, and my Between Heaven and Earth radio show can transform your life just by listening. Be uplifted with inspiring topics, positive stories, and ideas that really work. Between Heaven and Earth Radio is conscious living for your soul, every Wednesday at 4 p.m. Eastern Time.
Do you want to be a better communicator? Do you want to better connect with the important people in your life? Do you want to enrich your relationships? If so, join me, Matthew Cooper, on the Positive Control System Show every Wednesday evening at 11 o'clock p.m. Eastern Standard Time on OMTimes Radio. I'll meet you there.
Being a radio host on IOM FM allows you to build your show on a rich platform with the power of the internet to fulfill your outreach goals and connect with a very specialized and global online audience, unlimited by time and distance. OMTimes Radio will provide you with web relevance, a recognizable conscious brand, and with the standard of excellence that has accompanied every single OMTimes endeavor. Host your show with OMTimes Radio Network. The cutting edge of conscious radio. OMTimes Radio. IOM FM.
Research about this subject, but it seems like Peru, and Bolivia have, opened, for research. Do they allow any DNA research, to actually see what these skulls are, or may possibly find out if they're human or alien or whatever they are?
Yeah, we're actually in the final procedure of getting Peruvian government approval to send samples to major American laboratories to have DNA testing done, because we've met a great Peruvian archaeologist who in fact wants to know the answer to these questions. The conventional stories of where the brackets come from, according to archaeology, don't make any logical sense. And so we're very much looking forward to having this done. And thankfully, the Peruvian officials are interested in this. They're trying to stop it from happening. Whereas, as you know, in many other countries in the world, there have been so many cover-ups of so-called historical anomalies. Luckily, Peru's not one of those.
No, that's what I was thinking myself, because at least this opens the door to more possibilities where the other countries, from what I've seen, where you just, mentioned, there's so many other countries that said, no, let's keep with the lore. This is something different. Let's keep it within our country, and we're not going to expand upon it. But you were also associated with some of the Star Child skulls. You did some work with, I can't, it's terrible. He just passed a few years ago. I can't think of his name. The Star Child.
Lloyd.
Yeah, that's what I said. I drew a blank. I'm like, oh, okay. I didn't even have it written down, so that's why. Thank you. That is a whole different type of skull feature.
Yeah, well, Lloyd spent 12 years studying the Star Child skull, and the unfortunate thing is only one of them have been found, where there are at least 1,000, if not a few thousand, elongated skulls from Paracas, especially in different museums all over the world. But he did find between 25 and 30 physical and anatomical differences between the Star Child skull and a normal human skull. And academics attacked him feverishly about it, but he found some very solid evidence that what he had with the Star Child skull is something which is not a medical condition or anomaly. It seems to be a completely different species of life form.
Yeah, I don't know why science always wants to hide it. I mean, I remember discussing with one researcher in the Polynesian area, there was this race of little people. I don't know whether it was early part of the Hawaiian culture, but they exist. It seems if it's not within the norm, people who bring up different research are really, really given a really hard time until if it's finally okay, it's in their face. We got evidence, this makes sense. So that's why I admire a lot of you that are doing this work, because it's not easy. I mean,
No.
Hopefully it's getting a little easier, but it's not easy.
No, it's true, and the unfortunate thing is that archaeology and academia in general tend to regard any indigenous information as being folklore or fairy tales or whatever, but what they don't realize is that oral tradition is the history of the people. And to disregard it is to disregard the history of the people. So that's why I make a very strong effort at combining scientific information with oral tradition. And when they do overlap, then you know that the oral traditions are telling you an absolute truth. And in the case of Hawaii, what you're speaking of, were called the Menehune people. And they were an earlier people living in Hawaii when the Tahitians arrived in the 12th century. And the Tahitians gave them that name, which means people of little power, because they were a people of peace. And the Tahitians were very vicious and warlike. And so the Menehune were actually normal-sized people, but through the Tahitian overthrow and rewriting of history, they describe them as being, like small elves who, who were hiding in the forest. But in fact, they were normal-sized people with red hair, and light skin, who of course lived in the forest because they were trying to stay away from the Tahitians who were trying to eradicate them.
Now, it's fascinating about this red hair.
Yeah.
It really is, because it keeps on coming up. Like I said, my so-called expertise is, Asia. And it was also, if you look at the old world map, the Pangaea, where it was all the, where land masses were together, you have around Mongolia going toward Asia, the red-haired mummies.
Right.
So it's this constant, but then science says, I don't know, they're from, they're from Europe or whatever, but it seems to be a definite link. These red-haired people.
Well, there is, and of course the Chinese government would like these red-haired mummies to go away because, as is often the case, one ethnic group that happens to, live in a nation like Asia for an extended period of time, think of themselves as the first inhabitants, and evidence shows up that other people were there. They try.
It doesn't go too well.
Hide the nation. We're living in the 21st century, and it's time that our real history has to be revealed now because the age of cover-up is over.
Yeah, no, it really is fascinating. And I'm losing your signal a little bit, so you're broken up, and I'm hoping Skype is going to. Hoping Skype's going to keep with us here.
Okay.
Oh, good. You're there. No, it's so fascinating, and it does seem to be a time there people are questioning. So even what I know of, the ancient Asian shamans, it's always the same thing. They carved in jade what they saw. And a lot of, during the Shang period, which was the very Neolithic period, you had a lot of odd things there, a lot of odd carvings in jade, but this is what they saw, and was the art medium they transposed to. And the same thing with the Olmec. You have those huge boulder heads. So I don't think archaeologists, they're really going to have to say, okay, well, maybe it's time to let's expand upon it. So, if researchers like you and others keep on banging at that door, they're not going to have much of a choice. But
no, they won't.
And it really is time because it's such a fascinating subject, and people with the internet are so aware now of things. I don't think they're going to accept anything less. And this is not, I hope I'm not putting Guy on the spot before we go. Is there really things that they say the Smithsonian kind of hides? I keep on seeing this on many different writers, their books, the researchers. They say, all right, there's giant skeletons. There's evidence of giants in the world, or even around the mound builders in Central USA, or they get other evidence and they take it and it dismisses it. But I mean, if that's going to put you on the spot, don't answer it.
No, actually, one of my close friends now is an author called Elie Marzulli, who's been studying the giants in North America for, I think, decades. And, there are hundreds, if not thousands, of newspaper clippings especially from the 19th century, of discoveries of 7 and up to 8 foot tall red-headed people who were not Native American, that have been found in many different locations, including the mound builders areas. And the Smithsonian seems to have decided that they,
Oh, sounds like we lost Brian. Let me try to get him back.
they definitely don't
we got
fit
you
into
back.
these skeletons or skulls. The Smithsonian supposedly made a major campaign to find any large skeletons or skulls, especially those that didn't appear to be Native American, and warehouse them, never to be accessed again.
I wonder why.
Because they don't fit in with the standard history of the migration of Native people from Asia across, the Bering Strait. And they don't fit into Darwinian evolution either. They're an anomaly according to that. So I definitely think there were other subgroups of humanity living in different parts of the world. The elongated skulls of Paracas may have been one example of that. People fleeing from oppression, probably a small population, and then resettling somewhere. And then once again, they became overtaken by another culture, and their history to a great extent has been either forgotten or wiped out. And that's why I'm trying to recover who they were and what they did.
I think, like I said, I really admire that, because it's just, we get bits and pieces and we're going, all right, we'll see, like I said, I'll see articles and you see these skeletons. And it's like, how can people deny it? All right, we'll get back to you, Brian, for the last segment.
Okay.
Conscious media for conscious minds. OMTimes. Are you trying to get from point A to point B and need a little advice? Connect with the counselors at OMTimes Advisors. Whether you're looking for a life coach or a spiritual intuitive, the advisors participating at advisors.omtimes.com were carefully chosen based on their gifts, skills, and professionalism. OMTimes Advisors, connecting you with the best advisors in the business.
Hello, I'm Miriam Knight of New Consciousness Review, inviting you to my new show where I interview the rising stars of the conscious awakening. We'll explore the many faces of consciousness and action and intriguing perspectives on life, the universe, and everything in between. Join us each Wednesday at 2 p.m. Eastern on the Rising Stars Show.
This is Terry Van Horn, and I want to invite you to join me for my weekly radio show, Healing Light, on OMTimes Radio every Wednesday at 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. On Healing Light, we want to bring love, light, and blessings into your world. You can find out more about us at www.healinglightonline.com. Blessings.
Host your show on IOM-FM, the radio network of OMTimes Media, one of the more recognized brand names in the conscious community, and is backed by the extensive marketing reach of OMTimes. Hosting a show on IOM-FM immediately connects you with our extensive dedicated community. The Real Conscious Connection. OMTimes Radio. IOM-FM.
And like I said, this hour always goes so quick and there's so much information you want to get in. But we touched upon a few things. And if you're interested in the elongated skulls, his book about the elongated skulls of Peru and Bolivia is a very detailed, and it's really explains a lot. And the more we go into it, it brings up more questions for me. But he's just going to have to keep on writing books so he answers all our questions. All right, Brien. Now, where's your newest focus going to? I mean, you have different chores, or what is happening in your life?
Yeah, we have a tour of Mexico in February. We're going to be looking at some major Aztec, Olmec, Toltec, and Maya sites, and that will be the research material for my 17th book, which will be probably called The Feathered Serpent, looking at the phenomenon of Kukulkan and Viracocha and the other, ancient teachers that came through the Americas. In April, we're going to have our 4th annual Lost Ancient Technology of Egypt tour. And then in May, we'll be going to Turkey to look at the ancient Göbekli Tepe and other sites. And then July, we have our another tour looking at lost ancient technology of Peru and Bolivia with experts from Egypt coming to make comparisons of the megalithic works of Egypt and those of Peru and Bolivia.
That's fascinating. You're definitely on the go.
Yes.
I would be very interested on when you go as far as, the Aztec and the Olmec. I've always been curious if there's been a correlation between the Inca and the Aztec and cultures that fascinate me. And I'll be really even more interested if you find any evidence of the red-haired people. This is locked into my head that, there's something going on there. So
yeah. Well, actually, when the Spanish first arrived in Cusco, which was the capital of the Inca, they remarked they wrote that they saw certain individuals who were very light-skinned and had red or even blonde hair. And when they asked the local people, because the local people, of course, had black hair and were very dark, they said, well, who are those people? And they were told those are the last of the Viracochans.
It's very, very interesting. So just to recap, just for the listeners again, Viracocha was he not a theory, was he a real person?
I believe that the Viracochans were a group of people who arrived from another continent, not from South America, but they arrived in South America and decided to explore. And as they explored, they began teaching the local people, because the Viracochans were very advanced in the arts and sciences and agriculture as well. And it seems that they traveled again in a northwesterly direction up to about the Peru and Ecuador border. And Viracocha actually means the foam of the sea. So it's believed by some that that title was given to them because they either departed, and what they left behind was the foam of the sea in their wake. Or another interesting story is that when the Viracochans spoke to the local people who asked, where do you come from? They said, we come from the foam of the sea, meaning that they came from a landmass that sank.
Fascinating. Very fascinating. I mean, this, I wish I had more time. It really totally is fascinating. It just seems like all these little keys to all these little puzzles. And one day it's going to all come together, and all this research that you and others are doing is going to just have to rewrite history. And it's probably going to blow the mind of the Smithsonian. But it's really, really fascinating. Just briefly before we go, do you think, I know you wrote a book about Easter Island too, right?
Right.
Because I think I have that book. I didn't get a chance to go into it as much. Do you think you would ever find if you were to go there, parts of this elongated skull cultures there.
Yes, actually, we've been there twice, and the first time we went, we were told by an elder that prior to the Polynesians, there was a race of elongated-headed people who lived there, and of course, the Moai figures. In 1950, Thor Heyerdahl, when he went and did the first excavation, he and his team discovered that the so-called heads are complete bodies. So they were able to dig down, and they found one was at least 40 or 50 feet tall. So that means there are about 900 plus of them, which are complete bodies. And the question is, based on the fact that only the heads and the necks are appearing above the soil,
Right.
how old are these things, and how did they wind up getting buried like that?
Is there any answers? Because now you got me curious.
Well, actually, we were able to go on our second trip. We went with geologist Robert Schock, who is an expert on stone weathering. He's the man who was able to redate the Sphinx of Egypt at being a minimum of 9,000 years old based on water weathering. So that predates the Sphinx. That means, the Sphinx was sitting there at least 4,000 years before the dynastic Egyptians ever showed up. And so as he studied the weathering patterns of some of the stonework on Easter Island, he said, I have no problem in considering that some of this was done 12,000 plus years ago. And that's from a PhD, American PhD geologist in a very high position of teaching.
Yeah, I admire him too. I was trying to get him on the show. He stands, it's so wonderful to see everybody standing their ground.
Yes.
It really is. And I think, all of you have the support of so many of us interested in this subject that, just keep doing what you're doing, because you got a lot of backing. People like me and people that follow me are interested in this. We want to know. So like I said, I was amazed to find out that there was Easter Island seems so desolate. Things that they show us is, all right, you got these wonderful statues, and then as far as the culture, it just seems like it's almost non-existent. But it seems like there's a lot more to Easter Island to be unveiled yet.
Oh yeah. Well, actually, the one of the key things about Easter Island is its location. The Polynesian people, as far as I know, considered the entire Pacific as being their, the equivalent of their continent, because being a seafaring people, they didn't find much of a difference between water and land because they were adept at both. And so a site like Easter Island, if you study the winds and currents of that part of the world, Easter Island is key at the fact that if people wanted to move from Polynesia to South America or back, Easter Island is strategically located as a refueling station for water and food, etc. And actually, of course, you will have heard of the Kon-Tiki.
Right.
Well, about a week ago, Kon-Tiki II set sail from the coast of Peru, and they're planning on landing directly at Easter Island, most likely within a few weeks.
Oh wow! I have to keep abreast on that one.
Yeah, I think if you put in, just put in a search engine, Kon-Tiki 2, you might be led directly to their website where they give daily updates of where they're at and how the voyage is going.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up. Now we only have like a minute or two. What, for the viewers listening, just mention your websites. You're on Facebook. Plus, you have a forum going, but if someone wants to look for you other places, where can they find you?
The best is my main website, which is hiddenincatours.com, and that has links, of course, to tours, but it also has a link to my almost 800 YouTube videos, and my Facebook you can click on there as well. I have lots of articles and different interviews and other multimedia things that I've been involved with for the past 5 or so years.
Yeah, like I said, I really admire your work, Brien, and please keep it going.
Thank you.
Because information is coming out that we're always curious about, but no one really wants to talk about it. So, to have someone say, okay, this is, there's evidence that we can correspond to some of the lore, is absolutely wonderful. So,
it is. I'm sorry, but the more that we can find actual evidence of the existence of these, so-called myths, then that means that the myths are real. And so that gives, that means that indigenous people have been telling the truth all along about these stories that especially scientists disregard as being just storytelling. The stories are telling you the reality of the past, and the more that we can bring that up, the more fascinating humanity becomes.
I agree, and I'm hoping that the scientists or even the young people that may look for a career in life and stuff, just like you were guided, this is maybe where I should explore, is for them to follow their hearts and their dreams like you, and we'll have a better world. All right, thank you, Brien.
Exactly.
So much.
My pleasure. Thank you.
Okay, bye-bye.
Bye.
Your